Sorry we had to keep you waiting so long. It's been a hectic day.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. I know these tricks already. You keep the suspect in the cage and you observe, prod, rinse, repeat. I know a psychological tactic when I experience it, detective. Yeah, you want me to get shifty and nervous so you can better grill me, find a weakness, and get the confession you've been trying to pry out of me for so long. Surprised there's not two of you, although I guess I understand with you needing to do the CCTV thing. It's tough to pull off the good cop, bad cop. You seem like a good cop. If you were a bad cop, where's my advocate?
Well, I can assure you that I'm good. We've spoken enough that you should know that by now. This isn't our first conversation.
Conversation. You call it a conversation. It's quaint.
You do remember why I can't be in the same room as you, right?
Yeah. I remember, detective.
Well, we've spoken to a whole lot of your, I guess, acquaintances would be the right word. Maybe these are people that you consider friends, but that sentiment may only run one way. Any sort of affection you have in that arena, I'd consider reevaluating if I were you. Just maybe rethink your ideas on who your friends are. While you're at it, you need to rethink what sort of stories you can tell me and what I'm going to believe and what I'm going to see through. Because, as I mentioned, we've spoken a lot, and a lot of what you've said just doesn't add up. You're painting yourself into a corner, you're contradicting yourself. It's not uncommon for someone who likes to talk, as you admittedly do. I mean, the way I see it, we have two ways out of this situation. Either you quickly become a better liar, or we just stick to the truth. And I'd much rather do the latter. Neither one of us has any place to go. We can just sit here running in circles for as long as you want, but you're stuck in that room, I'm stuck in this room. I don't know what the point is of prolonging that.
Finished? First off, you're dead wrong about me not having any place to go. I've got plenty of places to go. And I don't need to leave this room to do it. If I talk, it's because I choose to talk. And I don't give a whit about what you think you've heard from people purporting to know me or where I was, who I am. Really, anyone who claims to know anything about me at all, none of that holds any water with me. As I'm sure you're aware, everyone lies to cops. And I don't have any friends, so you can go fuck yourself on that count too. The funny thing is, you all think you've got the advantage of me here, but really, it's the other way around. Because you gotta listen to me. You have to pay attention to me and what I say. You have to take notes and try and decipher my intent. You're hanging on my every word. And then later you have to analyze them, look for clues, inconsistencies, and try and uncover objective truths. So, you're the captive audience here, not me. You're just as stuck in this room as I am, even though you're probably behind that wall. In fact, you're more stuck than I am because I can sit here and think about whatever the hell I want. I can just go to my happy place. In fact, I think I'll do that now.
Really? Is that what you're gonna do? Is it? Do you enjoy wasting my time?
Refreshing. But you have to think about me. I'm your purpose, and that makes me a lot more important to you than you are to me. But it is true. It's hard for me to deny that I feel some level of compulsion to confess. That particular drive started before I could talk or feel guilt, at least what I would later recognize as guilt, way before that. By the time I could actually speak, I'd already felt like I'd done despicable things that I needed to get off my chest. Although I did it in strange ways, sometimes by denying them completely or changing the subject or any number of things that would seem on the surface to have little to nothing to do with coming clean. But I don't think I need to tell you that you don't need someone to literally tell you they did something that you think they did for it to be a confession. Maybe legally you do, but we are subtle machines, and anything anyone says, especially in response to a question, could be a confession. You just have to know how to interpret it right. So, maybe you ask me if I did so-and-so, and I tell you a story about the Colorado Fuel and Iron Company. And maybe I go off and talk for an hour about the Ludlow Massacre. Do you know anything about that? It's not something they teach in school. But that's neither here nor there. The point is, I go off on some non sequitur. Or maybe you think it's a metaphor. Maybe you think I'm trying to act mentally unstable. Maybe you think the Ludlow Massacre never happened at all. Getting off course, I mean, the nub of it is you can't take anything at face value. Not the news you hear, not the history you read, and surely not anything I say in answer to any of your questions. But you probably already knew that. You know I have an agenda, and you know and I know that you have an agenda. That much is clear. But do you realize you also have a second agenda lurking just beneath the obvious agenda that is your job? Whereas me, I don't have a second agenda. And even if I did, would you just automatically assume yours is righteous and mine is sinister? Because if you do, you need to look inside a little more. Do some soul searching. Go to a kibbutz. Hell, I don't know. Just stop being so easily led or distracted. Maybe we both have agendas within agendas, and they're nested, stacked all the way down. I suppose we could call that an Jenga. Nothing?
Could you excuse me for a moment?
I see. That's exactly the kind of thing I'm talking about. What could be more important than what we're discussing right now to you?
I need to use the bathroom.
Oh. Well, biology waits for no one. I'll be here when you get back. course not. That was fast. So, to continue, a full and frank confession. Full's the tough ask out of those two. To confess fully requires complete self-awareness. And to be truly self-aware, you first have to realize that you're predicating everything you believe and everything you think on your cumulative interpretation of every event in your life up until this point. That can be a paralytic, you know, it's like standing on the edge of a dark, deep chasm. It can be scary confronting that stuff. But you have to do it. If you want to live in truth, introspection is essential. Now, some of these events in your life, some of them you've witnessed firsthand, and those leave a deeper mark. But even that mark isn't the whole truth, because you don't have all the context. You just have what your senses perceived. You know, who forged the brand, who stoked the flame, blah, blah. You're just guessing. If it even occurs to you to guess at all, which it don't most. And that's just what you witness. Most of what we think and believe is twice or even more removed from anything resembling an objective truth. We're all floundering, detective, but just like your brain has, in the interest of self-preservation, filtered out any sense of the Earth's rotation, you've unconsciously filtered your data set, that complete data set of experiences you've had since birth, the oeuvre of you. And since it's the totality of information that you have, it feels solid. It has to. Just like the Earth does. Just like the rotation got filtered. Your brain is very good at that. And there have been studies where people have been given glasses that invert everything they see. They're looking at the world upside down, which is interesting because if you want to get into the biology of it, we're all actually looking at the world upside down anyway, because the image displayed on the back of our retinas is inverted already. It's actually a good example of evolution's adaptive limitations. It's not really germane here. So these subjects wearing these topsy-turvy spectacles, quite rightly, found it disorienting at first. But it turns out that after only a couple of days, they were functioning just as well with their inverted sight as they did previously with their regular sight. The brain is an amazing thing. And really, that's my point. as wonderful as the brain is, it does have limitations, and we are all a slave to those limits. The brain creates your reality based on its ontological development, which is your exposure to events. And this is actually more important, your brain's interpretation of those events, because your brain is not just this dispassionate, unbiased interpreter of facts, as much as we'd like to believe it. Your brain has to start judging from day one. It takes your experiences and spits out a set of rules, truths, things it tells you you can rely on, and things that it tells you you can't rely on. And those subjective judgments are based on a pretty damn narrow window of experience. It's as if life gave you Legos, and you've taken the Legos you were given, and you've constructed your view of the world. But that's all it is. It's a single frame of reference, because you just have the Legos. That's the granular baseline of how your brain interprets events in this analogy. You have your Legos, and you have the way you've chosen to arrange them, and they tell you one thing, one side of one story, your interpretation. Now, lots of experiences are universal, which means lots of people are given the same Legos. And lots of Legos imply form. There's those bridge pieces, the ones with the slant on the side, and those annoying thin ones that are so hard to remove once you've got them attached to something. But there are implied patterns. Legos have limits because there's a non-zero level of granularity to them. So lots of people end up arranging their Legos in similar ways. Similar, but very rarely identical.
Are we really going to talk about Legos all night here? Is that what's going to happen?
The interesting thing about this is that you'd think instinctually that the more Legos you have, the better. The more accurate your personal interpretation of reality. But I don't think that's intrinsically true. I mean, talking in broad strokes, a shoebox full is probably better than a matchbox. But having a limited number of Legos forces you to be crafty, to arrange the ones you do have with care. Forces you to experiment a little more, and you end up with a less common, probably closer to unique perspective. And since there are fewer pieces, it's a much clearer, simpler one, and maybe it's a little closer to the truth. You ever see a picture of a tourist standing in front of the Eiffel Tower and find yourself curious about what they're thinking? There's really no need. They're thinking something along the lines of, wow, I'm looking at the Eiffel Tower. It's so pretty. Let's go to a cafe and pretend we're someone we're not for a few hours. I might even try escargot. Some variation on that theme. But if you look at a picture of a person sitting in an empty room, staring at a blank wall, and that's much more compelling. You almost can't help but wonder what's going through their heads. And it would be very difficult to guess. But I can guarantee you it has nothing to do with conversion rates or how crowded Notre Dame is going to be that afternoon. That's why kids are so good at spotting liars, if you ask me. They haven't yet constructed these Seussian Rube Goldberg contraptions with bits that don't quite line up, but you force them to anyway, because you didn't have a choice. And there's a mess of spare pieces littering the floor that makes up the framework that is your perception of the universe. These kids, these simple kids, when they see you, they see right through you. They see right through your actions. They catch a glimpse into your brain, that mess of a brain, and their first reaction is loathing. Loathing and fear. It's a fear of ever becoming like you. And we, the elders, we don't remember that feeling quite so well. Just like we don't remember anything from our childhood as well as we should. I'm talking about the feelings, not the events. A lot of the gut reactions we had as kids were so on the money because of that simplicity. They were reactions to situations that, were we to experience them now, identical experiences, we'd butcher the translation. We'd overcomplicate the thing. It would have to come through our labyrinthine set of intertwined tubes and jerry-rigged bridges and uneven pathways. And by the time we got done with it, we'd be dead certain we knew something. But what we think we know was corrupted. It was tainted by the circuitous path that it took to get to the essence of what is us. We were better off before, but we abnegated ourselves of the clear, focused lenses we were blessed with at birth. We didn't fight it because we were fooled. We thought we were getting closer to the truth. We thought we were becoming more and more enlightened when we were really just becoming more and more burdened. Each day added a tiny, imperceptible flaw in our lens. Over time, these flaws accumulated, started diffusing light, obfuscating the truth, became a glass darkly. Make it sound like we had a choice there, and that's probably not right, and it's certainly not fair. Like I said before, I think it's instinctual. it's very difficult to avoid. I mean, the world is throwing these pieces at you. What do? You pick them up. You build something out of them. It's common sense. At least it seems like common sense. And I guess, in theory, it is possible to create the perfect construct. Near perfect, anyway. And certainly some are objectively better than others, more accurate than others. Well, maybe that's what genius is. Maybe that's what madness is. I don't know. It's a tough place to reach, since every block relies on the stability of the block beneath it, and there's no going backwards. It's up, up, ziggurat. And once your construct starts to skew, it's darn near impossible to get it back on track. And once you sense the first tiny wobble, that's when you panic. That's when you start trying the weird stuff, the things you never thought you'd do. That fear topples the first domino in what was a previously stable life, because now your immutable framework is showing cracks, and you peer into these cracks, and you hope to God or the flying spaghetti monster, whoever, that they're superficial. But to your horror, you see light through them, and that's it. Your previous sense of stability, of thinking you've just about got things figured out, well, that just falls away. So you panic. And then you react accordingly. In the moment, you probably see it as pushing boundaries. You know, you're trying new things. You're expanding your horizons. Maybe you're taking drugs, jumping out of airplanes, leaving your husband or your wife or your boyfriend or your girlfriend. I don't know. You're taking risks. You're behaving in a manner unlike your old, or rather your unsullied self. And you tell yourself that you're learning, you know, you're pushing the envelope. But what is really happening is you're desperately trying to stop the can't that started to show up in your fragile representation of your own reality. Your home is falling apart around you. And these roads less traveled, you know, these ultimately fruitless tangents, they manifest as outcroppings, trying to offset irreparable imbalances. You know, you're tacking on flying buttresses and cantilevers and shims and stuff like that. But it doesn't do any good. Once your construct has started to sway, neither you nor anyone else can right it. Inevitably, with age, you end up with the mess that is your psyche, and one day it's gonna fall over. It's doomed to topple. And the longer you've managed to stave off the inevitable, the more catastrophic the crash. Maybe you decide it's best to get it over with early. kicking over the sandcastle. It's always easy. Or maybe you decide to strategically crash a few times a year to kind of keep things manageable. But I think most people hang on as long as they can. I think that's the genesis of the midlife crisis. You can't stop the crash. The best you can hope for is to defer it some. But when it does happen, there is one other option. Maybe you decide not to rebuild at all. Maybe that's what you do. Stop the cycle. See if you can make your way through the world with no interpretive framework at all as a child. Like I said before, it's hard. We tend to make frameworks, whether we're aware of it or not, most times. It takes experience and concentration to live through events and not infer additional information and then try and relate that information with other events or other information. And once you've done that, you're right back where you started. But that was my choice. When my pieces fell, I decided not to rebuild. I decided to stop trying to make sense of things. Stop trying to look for reasons or connections. It's been tough. It means I deny cause. And if I deny cause, it follows that I deny effect. I've stopped having faith in an ability to control effects using well thought out causes. And I expect that's frightening to you. I expect that you, being a follower of a system of laws that's entirely predicated on cause and effect, find the idea of a person who has no truck with such a relation troubling. What's keeping me from killing? You've got this group of people, atheists, people who don't just not believe in God, but actively believe there is no God, and there is a difference. And you've got this group of people, the believers, who think, well, what's stopping an atheist from going on a killing spree? You know, there's no spiritual law, they believe, preventing it, but by and large, they don't do it. And the atheist will usually tell you it's because they have some internal sense of right and wrong, and they have no need of this external source, God, telling them not to do something that they just instinctually know isn't right. I don't believe in God, but I still think that's a bunch of horse crap. You want to know why I don't kill? The only reason I don't go on some unhinged killing spree? Simple. I don't want to. Got no desire to do it. And that's markedly different from having this internal moral barometer telling me not to kill, because that implies an internal conflict, That means there are times that the baser levels of my brain want to kill, but as that urge travels up from the R complex into the cerebrum, gets foiled by the higher functioning, overriding layer of gray matter. There's a part of me that does want to kill, but then there's that innate sense of, it's a cerebral sense of justice that prevents me. I don't have such a sense. I just don't want to kill. Even at my angriest, I've never wished another person dead. But maybe I'm just fooling myself. You always have to consider the source. And I'm my own source. Maybe this is all just one big mindfuck. And maybe my internal construct is designed to make me think it doesn't exist. I've never really thought about it that way before. A construct designed to disguise its own existence. I suppose there's really no way for me to know the difference, is there? Troubling. I'm ready to confess. There's been no improvement since last week. I'm going to recommend we up the dose to 15 milligrams a day. Oh, and nurse, I think it's best if we revoke his Lego privileges for a while. Thanks.